The ground didn't rumble. It screamed. A thunderous roar split the mining tunnels of VX-921, a brutal high-gravity world where even the air felt like it was trying to crush you. In a heartbeat, steel supports snapped like twigs, and rock came crashing down in an avalanche of dust and death. Sirens blared, useless against the chaos. Lieutenant Mira Carter barely had time to register the seismic event before her comms exploded with panicked voices. "Mayday, mayday! We've got a total collapse in Section 9. Multiple workers trapped. Structural integrity compromised, another tremor incoming. We're cut off. We need help down here." And then, silence. Mira didn't wait for permission. She spun on her heel, already shouting commands as her boots pounded across the reinforced floor of the command center. "Give me a scan of the collapsed zone, now." A holomap flickered to life, blueprints of the mining tunnels overlaid with a pulsing red section. Too much red. 38 trapped, Dr. Elias Redding reported grimly, his fingers flying over the console. Oxygen depletion rate suggests we've got less than 12 hours before they suffocate. Less if there's another tremor. Mira barely heard him. She was already grabbing her helmet. The Drakari were already waiting for her outside the command center. Tall, broad-shouldered, and covered in armored scales, they moved with the confidence of a species that had clawed its way to the top of a predatory world. Commander Torvek, a grizzled Drakari officer, blocked her path. His yellow eyes flicked down at her, unimpressed. "This is a waste of effort, Lieutenant," he growled. "A cave-in of this scale? Your people are already dead." Mira gritted her teeth. "Not yet, they aren't." Torvek exhaled sharply, his nostrils flaring in irritation. "Your kind lacks endurance. This planet is merciless. You will burn yourselves out before you even reach them." Mira stepped closer, her gaze like a knife. "You don't know a damn thing about human endurance." Torvek's tail flicked once in irritation. But he didn't stop her. The tunnels were a nightmare. Dust choked the air, turning her visor display into a grainy mess. Even with exosuits counteracting some of the crushing gravity, every movement was like wading through thick mud. Myra's team worked fast, setting up stabilizers and carving a path toward the collapsed section. Drakari warriors joined them, moving boulders with their brute strength, but always sparing glances at the humans, waiting for them to falter. They didn't. Minute by minute, the dig continued. Sweat poured down faces, arms shook from exertion, but nobody stopped. "We've got a signal," Vega shouted suddenly. Mira rushed to the terminal, heart hammering. A weak transmission crackled through the static. Hello? Is there anyone out there?" Mira slammed the comm button. "This is Lieutenant Carter. We've got you, hold tight." A pause. Then a weak laugh. "Took you long enough." Mira grinned. They were alive. But the clock was still ticking. And humanity was just getting started. The Drakari were watching. Waiting. Mira could feel their eyes on her team, their silent expectations like a weight pressing against her back. They weren't here to help, at least, not in the way the humans were. They were here to see how long it would take before the human rescuers broke. It didn't matter. They would keep digging anyway. The rock refused to give. Mira gritted her teeth as she swung the reinforced cutter into another slab of collapsed tunnel wall. The high-powered plasma edge hissed against the stone, slicing through the obstruction bit by bit. All around her, human and Drakari workers labored in brutal conditions, heat, high gravity, and the ever-present threat of another collapse. "Move it up 2 degrees, she ordered, stepping back to let Dr. Elias Redding recalibrate the tool. His face was slick with sweat as he adjusted the control panel on his wrist. "The pressure's too high," Elias muttered. "If we push harder, the whole thing could come down on them." Mira exhaled sharply. The trapped workers were just meters away, but the debris was a maze of unstable rock. They had no choice but to work carefully. A Drakari worker, Subcommander Vectal, leaned in, his massive arms crossed. "This is futile," he said, voice heavy with skepticism. Even if you reach them, how will you extract them before another collapse? We'll find a way, Mira said without looking up. Vectal let out a low, guttural sound, a Drakari approximation of amusement. I admire your tenacity, human. But your kind tires too easily. It is biology. You are not built for endurance. Mira paused, then turned to face him. And what would you have us do? Give up? Vectal blinked. He had no answer for that. She didn't wait for one. Then get back to work. 6 hours in. Time blurred into exhaustion. The first Drakari worker collapsed at hour 6. A towering warrior named Arachazek, his scales dull with fatigue, leaned against the tunnel wall, breathing heavily. Torvek approached, examining his fallen kin. Enough, he said, shaking his head. We should regroup and return when strength allows. Mira stared at him like he just suggested letting the survivors die. We don't stop, she said, pulling her canteen from her belt and handing it to Sergeant Luis Vega, who was barely holding himself upright. Torvek narrowed his eyes. You are pushing beyond your limits. Myra's voice was steady. We haven't reached our limits yet. Torvek looked between her and the rest of the human crew. Their limbs shook. Their breath came in ragged gasps. Yet, not one of them stopped moving. For the first time, something that looked like doubt flickered across the Drakari commander's face. We've got movement, Elias announced, his voice hoarse from shouting over the noise of the dig. The seismic scanner in his hands flickered with a faint, fluctuating signal. Mira wiped a layer of dust from her visor. Talk to me. It's the survivors, Elias confirmed. They're trying to move toward us. Barely. Oxygen's running low. Myra's pulse spiked. Then we pick up the pace. Torvek stepped closer, his massive shadow looming over her. Your people, your own bodies, are failing. You push yourselves past exhaustion, but for what? If you fall, there will be no one left to save them. Mira exhaled, steadying herself before answering. That's where you're wrong. She gestured to her team, tired, battered, but still digging. Still pushing. Still fighting. That's the thing about humans, she said. We don't stop. Torvek didn't argue this time. He just picked up a cutter and started digging. The comms crackled again. Lieutenant. It was weak, barely more than a whisper, but it was unmistakably a human voice. Something's down here with us. The voice on the comm was barely audible, but the fear in it was unmistakable. Lieutenant, something's down here with us. Myra's gut clenched. The cave-in had been bad enough. Now this? She pressed her comm unit. Say again. You're not alone? Static. Then a ragged breath. Moving in the dark, not human, don't know what it is, please, hurry. The signal cut off. Mira spun to Dr. Elias Redding, who was monitoring the seismic scans. Anything on the sensors? Elias adjusted the display, frowning. The survivors are clustered here. He pointed to a cluster of yellow blips on the holomap. But there's something else. It's faint, moving just beyond their position. Could be shifting rock. Or it could be something alive. Torvek, who had been standing silent until now, crossed his arms. We warned you, human. You dig without knowing what lies beneath. Mira shot him a glare. And yet, you're still here. The Drakari commander didn't respond. 12 hours in, and Myra's team was running on fumes. Muscles burned. Hands bled through torn gloves. The high-gravity world had already claimed 2 Drakari warriors, both collapsing from exhaustion. The humans? They were still digging. Even Torvek had stopped questioning them. Tunnel integrity's holding, Elias reported, eyes on the scanner. But oxygen levels are critical. If we don't break through soon, we'll be recovering bodies instead of survivors. Mira refused to accept that. She turned to Sergeant Luis Vega, who was hunched over the manual tunneling drone, sweat pouring down his face. How much longer? Vega grimaced. 2 meters of rock left, but we're pushing it. One wrong move and the whole thing collapses. Mira nodded. Then don't make a wrong move. Vega chuckled darkly. No pressure, huh? He adjusted the drone settings and activated its plasma drill. The tunnel trembled as the machine burrowed deeper, each pulse bringing them closer. And then... beep! Breaking through. Elias shouted. Mira rushed to the tunnel entrance. A small gap had formed between the debris, barely wide enough to see through. Dust swirled in the dim emergency lighting on the other side, casting eerie shadows. Then, movement. A hand, bloody and shaking, reached through. Mira grabbed it. We've got them, she shouted. A chorus of exhausted cheers erupted behind her. Vega doubled over, breathing hard. Elias let out a relieved laugh. Even Torvek, ever the skeptic, exhaled sharply through his nostrils. Then the survivor gasped. Mira turned back just as the man's eyes went wide with terror. It's coming. A noise echoed through the tunnel. Low. Guttural. A sound no human throat could make. Myra's blood ran cold. The survivor started clawing at the rock, trying to pull himself through the gap. Please. Mira yanked him free just as something slammed against the other side. Dust exploded from the crevices. The tunnel shifted. And for the first time, the Drakari, proud warriors who feared nothing, took a step back. Tell me that was just rock shifting, Vega whispered. No one answered. Torvek stepped forward, eyes narrowing at the darkened gap. If something lives beneath this world, we have disturbed it. The survivor was gasping, barely able to speak. Mira crouched beside him, gripping his shoulder. What did you see? The man shook his head violently. No, not possible. Myra's voice hardened. Tell me. His next word sent a chill down her spine. It was looking at me. Another impact, louder this time. The tunnel lurched, the ceiling groaning under the strain. And then, from the darkness, a new sound emerged. A clicking. Rhythmic. Growing louder. Something wasn't just down there. It was coming for them. The sound was wrong. Not rock shifting. Not debris settling. It was clicking, sharp, deliberate, rhythmic. Like claws tapping against stone. Myra's pulse spiked. She had heard many sounds of danger in her life, gunfire, explosions, the eerie silence before a structure collapsed, but this was different. This wasn't random. This was a signal. The rescued miner, Harlan Briggs, was still gasping for breath, eyes darting wildly. His fingers dug into Myra's sleeve. You have to seal the tunnel, he rasped. Seal it, now. Mira didn't move. How many are still alive down there? Briggs' breathing hitched. I don't know. I think, maybe 5. But it doesn't matter. He grabbed her wrist. Lieutenant, you don't understand. It's hunting them. The tunnel shuddered again, a deep, reverberating tremor that sent dust cascading from the ceiling. Torvek stepped forward, muscles tense. If something moves in these depths, we must know what we are dealing with. Mira shot him a glare. We're dealing with survivors who are still alive. That's all that matters. Elias, still monitoring the scanners, suddenly stiffened. Guys? Mira turned. His face was pale. The scanners picking up multiple signals. The survivors, yeah, but also something else. Several somethings. He swallowed hard. And they're moving fast. Mira turned back to Briggs. What did you see? The miner shook his head frantically. Not much. Too dark. Just glimpses. Long limbs, low to the ground. Fast. And the eyes. He shuddered. Too many eyes. Vega muttered a curse under his breath. Torvek exhaled, his gaze unreadable. If this is a true predator, it has already claimed this territory. And we have intruded. Mira clenched her jaw. Then we take back our people and get the hell out. Vega wiped sweat from his brow. And what if we don't make it in time? Myra's eyes hardened. Then we make damn sure those things wish they never crossed paths with humans. The decision was made. The team pushed forward. With the tunnel partially cleared, they widened the breach. A backup generator was deployed, flooding the space with flickering emergency lights. The glow illuminated a pathway deeper into the collapsed section, narrow, unstable, and eerily silent. Mira motioned to Vega. Drone. Vega sent a small reconnaissance drone skimming through the opening. It buzzed forward, its infrared sensors scanning ahead. The live feed flickered onto Elias's handheld display. At first, nothing but dust and broken rock. Then, movement. A shadow flickered across the screen. Long, sinuous, disappearing into the darkness. Then another. Then several. Jesus, Vega whispered. The drone's feed cut out. Elias slapped the device. It's gone. No signal. Torvek exhaled slowly. We are not alone in this cave. Myra's hands tightened into fists. We keep moving. She turned to Briggs, who looked like he was reliving a nightmare. The others. Where are they? Briggs hesitated, then pointed to a collapsed corridor to the right. That way. But we lost contact an hour ago. Mira nodded. Then that's where we're going. Vega took a deep breath, then chuckled nervously. You know, I always wanted to visit a nice beach after my shift. Maybe somewhere without cave monsters. Mira cracked a tight smile. Next time, Vega. Then they stepped into the dark. The team moved with urgency, weapons ready. The deeper they went, the stronger the sense of being watched became. The air was thick, charged with something primal, an instinctive awareness that something was stalking them. Then, a skittering sound. Close. Too close. Mira froze, lifting a fist. The team stopped dead. Silence. Then, a shadow lunged from the darkness. A Drakari warrior had no time to scream. Clawed limbs wrapped around him, dragging him backward. Mira fired. The muzzle flash illuminated something horrific. A creature, low to the ground, its exoskeleton gleaming like obsidian. Its elongated limbs ended in curved talons. And its head, too many eyes, reflecting the light like polished glass. The bullet struck, but the thing barely reacted. It hissed, then vanished into the black, dragging its victim with it. The tunnel erupted into chaos. Torvek roared, drawing his plasma blade. Vega opened fire blindly. Elias cursed as he yanked out a flare, igniting the space with flickering red light. Myra's mind raced. They had seconds to act before another attack. Then came the sound that froze them all. The clicking. Not just from one direction. From all around them. Briggs choked on a breath. They're circling us. Mira raised her rifle. Let them try. The clicking closed in. It echoed through the tunnel, sharp, deliberate, and everywhere. Mira pivoted, rifle raised, sweeping her flashlight through the darkness. Shadows twisted in the flickering red glow of emergency lights. The air was thick with dust, sweat, and something else, the copper tang of blood. And then, from the void beyond their failing lights, the things came. A Drakari warrior, battle-scarred and proud, barely had time to react before the first creature struck. It lunged from the ceiling, moving too fast for something so large. Its talons pierced through his chest armor like it was paper. The Drakari had time for one strangled gasp before the thing yanked him backward, vanishing into the dark. Torvek roared. A war cry. A challenge. A warning. Mira didn't hesitate. She fired. The muzzle flashes lit up the tunnel like a strobe. The creature skittered sideways, unnaturally fast, but Myra's bullets still found their mark. A round punched through its elongated torso, thick, black fluid sprayed the walls. The thing shrieked. Then two more slammed into them from the side. The tunnel exploded into chaos. Mira fired until her magazine ran dry, then switched to her combat knife. Vega was on the ground, grappling with one of the creatures as its claws tore into his exosuit. He screamed in fury, not pain, as he jammed his sidearm into its snapping jaws and emptied the clip. The thing went limp. Elias, normally cool-headed, was shouting coordinates into his datapad, trying to redirect drone support, but the signals were cutting out. Torvek was a force of nature. The Drakari commander moved like a living weapon, plasma blade flashing in deadly arcs. One creature lunged for him, he sidestepped, twisted, and drove his blade through its skull. The body slumped, twitching. For a brief moment, Mira thought they were winning. Then she heard it, the walls shifting. Not rock. More of them. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Fall back. Mira shouted. Now. Vega staggered up, bleeding but mobile. Elias grabbed the wounded miner, Briggs, hauling him to his feet. Torvek snarled, but obeyed. Even he saw the truth, this was a fight they couldn't win. The creatures didn't pursue immediately. They didn't need to. They were hurting them. Mira realized it too late. The team sprinted through the collapsing tunnel, lungs burning. The emergency lights flickered and died, leaving them in absolute darkness except for the glow of their weapons. The clicking followed. Close. Closer. Elias, barely able to breathe, pointed ahead. Cave exit, 50 meters. Then the floor gave out beneath Vega. 1 second, he was running. The next, he was gone. Mira skidded to a stop at the edge of the pit, nearly toppling in herself. Below, nothing but darkness. Vega, she screamed. A heartbeat. Then, his voice, laughing. Still here, boss. Just, kinda stuck. Myra's mind raced. No time. No time. Can you climb? A pause. Maybe, but it's a hell of a drop. And, oh, shit, I think something's down here with me. A new sound slithered through the comms. Breathing. Not Vega's. Mira made a decision. The only decision. She unclipped her harness. Torvek, get them out. The Drakari blinked. You would go alone? Vega's not dying down there. Torvek steadied her for a moment, then nodded. Without another word, Mira jumped. She landed hard, rolling to absorb the impact. The tunnel floor was uneven, jagged. Vega was ahead, back against a rock, his pistol aimed into pure darkness. Mira landed beside him, rifle up. A noise of low, guttural, rumbled from the abyss. Then, finally, it stepped into view. This wasn't like the others. Taller. Stronger. Older. A leader. Its too many eyes gleamed with intelligence. And it spoke. Not words. But the meaning was clear. You do not belong here. Mira tightened her grip on her rifle. Yeah, she muttered. Well, too bad. The creature hissed. And charged. Mira opened fire. The last battle had begun. This content may violate our usage policies. Did we get it wrong? Please tell us by giving this response a thumbs down. The monster charged. Mira fired, a full burst straight into its center mass. The rounds punched through its exoskeleton, thick black ichor spraying the cavern walls. It barely staggered. Then it lunged. Mira dove left as claws the size of machetes tore through the air where she'd just been. The sheer force of the swing sent rock splintering into the walls. Vega, still half-pinned by debris, raised his pistol. Bang. 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 The bullets hit, useless. The creature's chitin barely cracked. Okay, Vega muttered. Not great. Mira rolled, reloaded mid-motion, and fired again. She wasn't aiming for the body this time. She aimed for the eyes. The first shot hit. The second went wide. The creature shrieked. Not in pain, in rage. It pivoted toward Mira fast, too fast, and in a blink, she was airborne, the force of its strike sending her crashing into the wall. Her vision blurred. Pain flared through her ribs. And then she saw it, Vega's knife. Still embedded in his belt. Mira didn't think. She acted. The creature lunged for her again, jaws wide, just as she grabbed Vega's blade, twisted, and plunged it straight into its exposed mouth. A shriek, so loud it shook the cavern. Then black ichor sprayed across Myra's visor as the monster convulsed. For the first time, it stumbled. And Mira didn't hesitate. She drove the knife deeper. The thing collapsed. Twitched. Then finally, stilled. Vega coughed, staring at the corpse. Jesus, he rasped. Remind me to never piss you off. Mira wiped the ichor from her faceplate and hauled him up. On your feet, soldier. We're not done yet. Above them, gunfire. Explosions. Screams. The team was still fighting. Mira grabbed Vega's arm and hauled him toward the exit. The walls rumbled, the hive was collapsing. By the time they reached the surface tunnel, the others were barely holding the line. Elias was crouched behind a mining rig, frantically tapping at a remote detonation panel. Torvek stood in the center of the melee, plasma blade ablur, cutting down anything that lunged too close. The Drakari warriors who had once doubted humanity were now fighting alongside them. And still, the creatures came. Mira didn't stop. Elias. Status. The engineer grimaced. Working on it. Charges are set, but... A creature tore through the barricade. Mira fired, emptying her last clip. The bullets slammed into its legs, sending it crashing forward. Torvek was on it instantly, his blade carving through its neck. More were coming. Vega grabbed Elias by the collar. We don't have time. Blow the damn tunnel. Elias hesitated, just half a second, then slammed the trigger. A flash of white. The shockwave threw them all backward as the tunnel detonated, collapsing in on itself. The screams of the creatures were cut off mid-howl. Then, silence. Nothing but the sound of falling rock and their own ragged breaths. Mira lay there, staring at the sky, her body aching, her mind still reeling. Then, a laugh. Vega, lying on his back, grinning through bloody teeth. We're still alive, he said, disbelieving. Holy shit, we're still alive. Torvek sat up slowly. His scales were dark with ichor, his armor dented, but his expression unreadable. Finally, he looked at Mira. You did not stop. Mira exhaled. We don't know how. Torvek studied her, then nodded. A deep, respectful bow. The Drakari have always valued strength, he rumbled. We believed humans were too soft. Too weak. His golden eyes gleamed. But we have learned something today. Mira raised an eyebrow. Yeah? And what's that? Torvek exhaled sharply. Humans, he said, do not break. News of the rescue mission spread faster than the fires that had nearly consumed them. The Drakari rewrote their records, adding a new name to their list of warriors worth remembering. Mira Carter. The human who would not stop. And across the galaxy, in the halls of power where alien empires once dismissed Earth as weak, they began to reconsider. Because if this was what humans did to save a handful of their own, then what would they do if someone tried to take everything from them? The galaxy had its answer. And it was terrified.